Let's get this sports podcast party started, all right?
The JAYREELZ podcast.
What is happening, Micah people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic, in excellent spirits. It's a new day, a new week, a new month, a new season on the horizon, an anniversary of sorts, and another milestone on deck. It's going to be that type of week for the podcast as I uncover all of what's happening in sports and then some, as this is the JAYREELZ podcast with JAYREELZ. For my first timers, welcome aboard. And for those who've been banging with me going back to the very beginning, somewhere in the middle or even as early as this past Thursday, I welcome you guys and gals back. And yes, now it's time to close the book on the Sports Dead Zone 2.0 and open the book to a new month. And as I mentioned there just about 40 seconds ago, it is a big week for the podcast as I'll have some housekeeping to start. Number one, the NFL preview, which will take place on my Wednesday Livestream, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, do so now. Or maybe once you finish listening to this podcast. I'm sure you can multitask. Make sure you subscribe. You're going to get a complete analysis of the NFL season. Of course, I'm going to go through all the divisions, the top storylines, the surprises, disappointments, my knockout pick, my over-under win totals, my Super Bowl prediction. I tell you, soup to nuts. You're going to have everything coming out of your ears when it comes to the National Football League. So please, live on Wednesday, 12 noon, during the live stream, YouTube, definitely go to the channel, subscribe, and look for the link, and make sure that you share it with your family, friends, foes, frenemies, etc. as we get set for another season on the gridiron when it comes to the pro circuit. That's number one. Number two, today is actually right on the dot, an anniversary of sorts, 7.5 years. I started this journey back on March 1st, 2018, and here we are now, 7.5 years later, September the 1st, on a Labor Day. For all those that are out there, especially here in this country, I hope you're enjoying your day off, kicking back, relaxing, and it is maybe the unofficial ending of summer, but it really concludes 3 weeks from today at 2:19 p.m. when the autumn equinox arises, and therefore, maybe just then you can put away your shorts, t-shirts, tank tops, and you can wear white. I don't want to hear this unwritten rule about, you can't wear white after Labor Day. Nonsense. Not only is Labor Day at its earliest time, the 1st of September, but trust me, I give you leeway, or I'll give you permission to wear white from now to the 22nd of September. So that's number two. And number three, another milestone, Thursday will be the 600th podcast of the JAYREELZ endeavor. So you got all that coming up this week. So please stay tuned. Keep connected there on the YouTube channel. I would sincerely appreciate it. I just touched 700, not literally people, but I just eclipsed 700 subscribers there as I'm trying to get this little engine that could to 1,000. So one more time, please subscribe. Just 300 away as I continue to move forward in this journey of mine when it comes to content creation, podcasting, live streaming, you name it, here on the YouTube channel. All right, so now that I got that out of the way, let's get right to it. And this is going to be quick, people, because I don't know what else to really unpack or even belabor, or as I hate to bring up the regurgitated narratives, but Major League Baseball right now is looking at a very sleepy September. It just is. Now, I know there are a couple of teams that are laying in the weeds in the wild card race, and there could be maybe a surprise there as far as someone overtaking a division. Now, we've talked about Dodgers, Padres. We've talked about Astros, Mariners, maybe the Blue Jays, although they gained a game in the standings yesterday. But the Yankees are just 3 back, and they do play the Blue Jays, I believe, next week. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But I'll take a look at the schedule, at least for the early part of the week. But other than that, and maybe the Texas Rangers trying to make a last minute charge on a wild card and an outside shot for a division, but let's just stick to the wild card. And yes, we do have the Royals hovering around as well as they're 3 games back. You really don't have anything to sink your teeth into. I mean, can I get on the Mets right now? And I understand people who listen to the podcast, they're probably like, JAYREELZ, we don't want to hear about the Mets. Here they were last week. You were riding high thinking that they could actually get closer to an NL East shot at winning a division. And after sweeping the Phillies there on Wednesday, going into Thursday's podcast, and with the Marlins coming to town, you're thinking, maybe they can win 3 out of 4, and hopefully the Braves could split with the Phillies, and they'll gain a game in the standings, and they'll be 3 back. as they embark on this 10-game road trip, which is going to be a brutal one. And here they are. They lose 3 out of 4 to the Marlins and actually got embarrassed in the process. I mean, there's no way to cut it. They lost the game there on Thursday night where they actually had a lead and they spit it up. Friday night, Jonah Tong with a very impressive performance. I understand he gave up 4 runs, but 3 of those were unearned. And then you had batting practice at the end there where you had Javier Sonoja and Luis Torrens going at it, giving up home run balls left and right, which is a disgrace when it comes to baseball. They have to fix that where the position player, I don't care if the score is 25-0. You cannot have a position player go in there and throw batting practice in the bottom of the 8th inning or top of the 9th inning, depending on who's trailing at the time. I mean, it's just an absolute disgrace. And then Saturday, the Marlins get up to a 5-0 lead. The Mets come all the way back to actually tie the game thanks to 2 home runs by Juan Soto, but then they give it up right away and they lose 11-8. And then yesterday with Sandy Alcantara pitching, and although he's pitched a little bit better in the second half, and he looked like his Cy Young former 3 years ago, as the Mets go quietly to the Motor City and losing 5-1. They lose 3 out of 4. So yes, all the euphoria from what happened there early to the middle of last week to Thursday's podcast, thinking that I told you guys maybe there is a shot at the division. Well, I'll say this right now, September 1st, as I'm recording this. This is early afternoon now, a little bit of a late start for yours truly. But the division for the NL East is over. And I understand they got 4 games in Philadelphia next week. And yes, there is still an outside shot that they could do so. But because they lost 2 games in the standings and did the exact reverse of what I thought they were going to do against the Marlins, maybe winning 3 out of 4, but they lose 3 out of 4, which maybe there was a letdown from the Phillies series. I don't know. But for this Met team that cannot win on the road, and they're going to play at Detroit here for 3 games, Cincinnati over the weekend, which is going to be their last stand to see if they can survive in this wild card race as their 4-back. And then they go to Philadelphia for 4, who also signed Walker Buehler yesterday. And I get it that Buehler may be on his last legs. He's 31 years of age. We know about the injury history, despite the fact that he has World Series pedigree and he does have the guts of a burglar. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate to automatically the Phillies starting to win under his watch with Buehler there in Philadelphia. But that is a significant pickup because we know Zach Wheeler's done for the rest of the year. And not to say he's going to all of a sudden be Zach Wheeler 2.0, but it does give them a body and a guy that has experience and knows how to win, especially with a team that's trying to get back to a World Series and win the whole thing for the first time since 2008. So with all that being said, the Mets, as far as the division, kaput. Done, 0, zilch, and that's not a reverse jinx. Trust me, we could get to a week from this coming Thursday, and the Mets can win those 3 games against the Phillies and maybe are 2 back at that time, which I don't think they will be, but let's just say they are. I'm still not going to break out the blue and orange pom-poms to think that, first place is in our sights and we're going to all of a sudden mow down the Phillies. So I'm just putting that out there right now. It's over. It's done. But I do think they're going to win the wild card, which goes back to my original point of a sleepy September. Because other than that, people, I don't know what else. We're going to talk about Kyle Schwarber and him possibly maybe getting close to 60 home runs as he hit that 4 home run, 9 RBI performance against the Braves there on Thursday night. Cal Raleigh, who's already at the 50 home run mark and may have gotten more since then. But am I going to talk about what he's done, especially if the Mariners aren't winning? To me, that would be almost a hollow record. I'm not going to go there with that. I could talk about a few other things. The Yankees had their 7-game winning streak snap, but until they beat better teams, and I believe they're in Houston over these next 3 days, and I'm sure they want to pay back for losing 2 out of 3 to Houston, about 3 weeks ago? I'm not going to get all pumped up and thinking that the Yankees are back, even though they're 3 behind the Blue Jays. And do you trust the Blue Jays 100% to win the division, considering they've been in first place since the 4th of July? Right now, my trust is wavering a little bit with the Blue Jays. So when it comes to baseball on a whole, I don't know what else to add. I don't know what else to tell you. Because where I'm going with this is pretty much the same song and dance that I've shared with you going back maybe 2 weeks ago, last Monday on the podcast, certainly Thursday on the podcast. And what am I going to do? Regurgitate the same nonsense to you here over the next 5 minutes and say, this team is 5 back in the division, or this is such and such out of the wild card, or these 2 teams. You know what's going on here. And even if this is your first time here on the podcast, which, welcome aboard, but all I could say is this. Baseball right now, the only hope of them having a very interesting September is if Kansas City, Texas, they keep pace, as well as the Reds. And that's for the wild card. Because right now the wild cards are etched in stone in both the American and National Leagues. as I pull up the standings. We know that currently the Yankees are in first place, just a half game ahead of the Yankees, where they are 3 games ahead of the Mariners, and the the Red Sox are 2.5 over the Mariners. And they also hold a 2.5 game lead over the Rangers, followed by the Royals. And I know the Guardians have played a little bit better as of late. They're 4 back, but I'm not going to go as far as the Guardians, because the Guardians are now a game over 500, where all the other teams are under 500. So I'm not even going to touch those teams that are beneath them, whether they're the Rays, the Angels, Athletics, etc. Now, the Athletics, they're 10.5 back, so forget about it. And then the National League, it's Cubs, Padres. Cubs are set. They are 5 ahead of the Mets right now, 2 ahead of the Padres, who are the 4-5 at the moment. And then you have the Mets, followed by the Reds. Like I mentioned, 4 back in that series. We'll talk about it more on Thursday with the Mets and Reds to see whether or not the Reds are going to be in this race or not. And all the Mets need to do is just win 1 game. It'd be good if they win 2, but if they win 1, they can't get swept there. That's all I got to say if you're a Met fan. And watch the Mets, for whatever reason, will be a dumpster fire after they get bombarded in Detroit, which historically they've been terrible in Detroit. Watch them minimum lose 2 out of 3 and maybe get swept, and then go to Cincinnati, just rumbling, bumbling, and stumbling, and watch them stub their toe and maybe lose 2 out of 3 or God forbid sweep. And then they have to go to Philadelphia after that. And we all know the Mets right now are 9 games under 500 on the road. So would it be out of the realm of possibility? Absolutely not. But the Mets do have a decent lead over the Reds. And although the Giants have played better, they're 5 back. And they are 1 game under 500. So I'm not even going to touch them. I just brought them up because I know they played better. And then even though the Diamondbacks and Cardinals are 5.5 back, but forget about them. And the divisions, you know what the divisions are. Forget about the Centrals, AL and NL, they're done. Yes, and the NL East is done. You have the AL East, which that could change at the drop of a dime. And then you have the NL West, as you know, and the AL West. That's it. There's nothing else to add. So all we have to hope for, one more time, American League are the Royals, Rangers to make a run, and maybe Guardians. And then the Reds just to keep pace with the Mets and maybe scare them a little bit. Because I don't trust the Giants, forget about the Cardinals, Diamondbacks, etc. That is your baseball in a nutshell. And I'm sure if you're Rob Manfred and company, you wish this was October 1st so you could start the playoffs, as opposed to sitting here now knowing that with the NFL on the horizon and college football already here, baseball is going to be an afterthought here for the month of September. That's all there is to it. I mean, I wish I could bring more excitement. I could add a little spice, a little flavor to this pennant chase, even if there was 1 or 2 juicy storylines, but there are none. Absolutely none. And if you want to talk about the overall records, who's going to get the 1 and 2 seeds, we know the Tigers, we know the Brewers have the best record respectively. Now I know, wait a minute, I may take that back there because Toronto could have the better record. No, the Tigers have a better record by a half game. So Tigers, Blue Jays, and you think the Astros will be the 3 seed and they'll play in the wild card round. And then in the NL, we know it's going to be the Brewers, and then it's going to be between Dodgers and Phillies, and the Dodgers currently are 1 game behind the Phillies for the 2 seed. So right now it's looking like Dodgers-Mets in the first round for the wild card, which is a great thing, but it's also a bad thing because that means either New York or LA are going home after 3 games or less if the wild card began today. And that's it. I wish I could add more people, but I cannot. And as far as the schedule here over the course of these next few days, you have Mets in Detroit, as you know. Now, Yankees are in Houston, I think, starting tomorrow because the Astros are playing the Angels in a wraparound today. So Yankees have a day off before they play Houston tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday. Philadelphia, Milwaukee, very good series there between 2 division leaders. Who knows? Maybe that could be quite possibly a championship series preview. Still remains to be seen there. But besides that, that's pretty much the only series of note that you're going to have. Cleveland, Boston, nah. Toronto, Cincinnati, all right, not bad, but it's interleague. Then you have, that's it, San Francisco, Colorado, Baltimore, San Diego, Seattle at Tampa, Texas at Arizona. Yeah, I mean, you really don't have much else. Miami, Washington, that's it. And let me see, tomorrow, LA and Pittsburgh. If they're East, that means they have another Eastern series, the Dodgers. We can look at that on Thursday because obviously we've got a lot of other things to discuss. Angels at Kansas City. Did I mention Atlanta, Chicago, Cubs only because they're in the race? White Sox at Minnesota. Yeah, so the big series that you have here of note. New York and Detroit, Mets that is. New York and Houston, Yankees that is. Then Cleveland, Boston, okay. Toronto, Cincinnati, okay. And besides that, that's it. There isn't anything else that I can really look at. Oh, Texas and Arizona only because, and that's a rematch of the World Series, of course, 2 years ago. But with Texas hovering around, you got to look at that. And I mentioned Angels in Kansas City only because Kansas City's hanging around the wild card. But that's what you got in baseball. So I'm just going to move on from there. Hopefully we'll get some more juice come Thursday, but chances are that may not be the case. Now, as I put on my helmet and shoulder pads, I'm going to talk college football first before I get to the NFL. And obviously we're 3 days away from the opener, Dallas at Philadelphia, without Micah Parsons. And you know I got a lot to say about that, even though it is now 4 days since the trade, because it happened on the day that the last podcast was released. But as far as college football goes, I tell you, I talked about this on Thursday and how I made it a point because it was the big game of the day between Texas and Ohio State, how Arch Manning, knowing that this wasn't the end-all be-all, knowing that this was a game that was certainly winnable, despite the fact that Ohio State was coming in fired up, celebratory. It was going to be a big giant party to celebrate the national champions of a year ago. But without Will Howard and obviously a new quarterback in tow, Julian Sayin, that is, I'm sure a lot of people were thinking, including yours truly, that not to say Texas was going to go in there and manhandle them. And even though I made the comparison of Texas last year when they went to Michigan and beat them up, what was it, 30-3 or 31-3? And mind you, that was Quinn Ewers at quarterback and not Arch Manning. But I had just in my gut the thought of maybe Ohio State, a little bit of a hangover. Julian Sayin would probably have to make too many plays. Texas has that great front line and great front seven defensively. But Ohio State said, yeah, hold my beer, because Ohio State was certainly dominant throughout. And all you saw throughout the course of that game was stop after stop after stop. 4 times did they stop them on fourth down, including twice inside the 10-yard line, including right before the half when Arch Manning couldn't sneak it into the end zone when they got stopped there. And Ohio State, Julian Sayin did just enough. Wasn't spectacular, but certainly was serviceable and managed the game properly, where Arch Manning threw a pick and certainly was ineffective until it was too little too late when they finally got the score in a very low-scoring game, which we kind of thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more 20-17, somewhere in that area, because I thought teams would probably score and feel each other out when you got closer to halftime. But that stop there at 4th and goal there on the goal line was huge. And for Ohio State, it's almost as if the dance and the beat keeps on going there in Columbus, where Texas, they're going to be fine. They're going to be all right. But that's one, if you're Steve Sarkisian and even Arch Manning, you didn't sleep and haven't slept since Saturday. Because not to say that they should have won the game or certainly had chances, which they did, and Ohio State was a better team. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. But for Arch Manning, for now the guy there in Texas to be the one that's now it's his team. It's not Quinn Ewers. It's not him floating in and out of these games as he did last year. And I know Ewers was hurt where Manning got an opportunity to start. But knowing that there's a lot on his shoulders, and of course, because of his last name, the pedigree, etc., everybody's going to think he's Peyton or Eli. Well, he certainly didn't show that here in this first game. And with plenty of games to go, and he's going to beat up on bad teams, and we're going to check on the schedule down the road to see what's going to be that next big game. Maybe it's the Red River Shootout against Oklahoma in early October. That's off the top of my head, but that was just a very underwhelming and disappointing performance for Arch Manning and Texas there. And again, it's one game. Can we kill Arch Manning? No, but you expected a lot more. And give it up. Ohio State, their defense was outstanding. You can't dismiss what they did, and I'm sure everybody geared up knowing that they were the preseason #1 team going in, and I'm sure that was a disrespect. Ryan Day, the head coach, probably put that out on the billboard throughout the locker room and maybe throughout the whole university to say, hey guys, the #1 team's coming in here. They may not be favored, but they're ranked ahead of us, and we're the defending champs. And the defense rose to the occasion and shut down Arch Manning and company. All right, so now they got that out of their system. Hopefully he could rebound and he'll be able to have a season that a lot of people think was going to be a good one there down in Texas, but certainly very underwhelming to start. And next up is Kalen DeBoer. Now, I understand this may not be your vintage Alabama team. We know why Nick Saban retired. We know why the turnover of the way college football is with transfer portals and NILs and things of that nature, that Alabama, although still has a good advantage over a lot of teams out there, but they're not going to be the one that's going to pick everybody out of the litter. So this is an indication when they go up against a Florida State team that won 2 games last year, and I get it, it's a new year, but still, this isn't a vintage Bobby Bowden Florida State team. And what happened? They come right out of the gate. The quarterback, Ty Simpson, 17 plays, 75 yards. You're thinking, oh, look out, Alabama. They come right out of the gate, and it looks like this is going to be a long afternoon for Florida State. And then they just blew the doors off of them. Ran the ball right down their throats, which is un-Alabama defense-like. I'm sure the Micah Fitzpatricks, the Will Andersons, even guys like who just had their eyes were bleeding. The C.J. Mosleys, everybody on down, to think that this team did not show up to slow down the Florida State rushing attack. And I understand you had the quarterback there, Tommy Castellanos, who also rushed for about 78 yards, and they kept moving the chains, and they did whatever they could to that Alabama defense, and it's back to the drawing board. So for Kalen DeBoer, he said, no excuses. I put it all on me. We fell short. I know there's a lot of expectations, so on and so forth. And you have to wonder. Now, DeBoer came from Washington, as you know. He went to a national championship game against Michigan and then went to greener pastures there at Alabama to try to fill those shoes of Nick Saban. And right now, you have to say, it has not gone well. They didn't make it to the postseason last year. I understand debatable. Could they have made it into the top 12? They could have, but obviously they weren't selected. And now they get up to this slow start, and we know that the SEC is certainly just a war path to get through if they're going to try to get to not only lose another game, but if they lose 2 more, chances are they could be out. Now, it all depends on what other teams are going to do, especially the way those top 12 are going to be ranked and how the selection committee is going to have the foresight to pick these teams. But that was just a terrible start, especially with the way they came out and got off on the board with that long drive. Their offense was non-existent, and their defense couldn't stop the run. So a terrible job by Alabama. So who knows how Kalen DeBoer, how he's going to regroup. And that's going to be one to watch. Not to say that he's on the hot seat or he's going to be on the firing block. No. But again, the expectation in Alabama is championship or bust. And just to think, if they're going to go through a second year without making it into the playoff, there's going to be a lot of question marks there. And I don't care what you say and how you want to portray it. And I know it's one game. Not to get crazy, but that is certainly a very bad start there for the Crimson Tide. And then you have Clemson. Now, we could look at Arch Manning in Texas. We could even look at Alabama, them losing on the road. And you could say to yourself, okay, they went into 2 places where it was going to be tough, it was going to be hostile, and they lost. No ifs, ands, buts, maybes about it. How do you explain Clemson? A team that a lot of people could think could do some damage, obviously in a weak conference in the ACC, and then to put up that performance there on Saturday night where LSU, who had a lot of new defensive players, and their defense showed up when they absolutely had to. It was a low-scoring game if you watched, as you saw. But Cade Klubnik, I understand he's a guy that could be a first-round pick or could be a guy that could come as one of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft. But he doesn't show you anything, if you ask me. I understand he's had his flashes and moments going back to last year, but that was another just question mark, kind of just rub your hands over your face to be like, what the hell's going on here? 19 for 38, 200 some odd yards. He did have a pick and did not play well. And I understand LSU rose to the occasion, and Garrett Nussmeier, another guy at quarterback there for LSU, who a lot of people think another top guy maybe coming out as far as a quarterback in this upcoming draft class. And Nussmeier was a little bit better, but LSU, I gotta say like it is, their offense at least moved the ball and they were able to do some things where Clemson, I don't want to say they were stuck in the mud, but they were very unimpressive there on Saturday. And I get it that LSU, give it up. I'm sure they look back the last 2 years, losing those opening games the way they did, and just very bad fashion. Florida State 2 years ago, and it eludes me last year. Who did they lose in that opening game? Damn it, I can't remember, but they did lose that first game, which kind of set the tempo for the rest of the year, where LSU, yeah, they had their moments, but not getting off to that good, feel-good game and to at least get your season on the tracks, which they did so on the road at Clemson. was just one that if you're a Tiger fan and of Clemson, because of course the LSU are the Tigers as well, you can't be happy with that performance. And your quarterback has to be a little bit better than that. And not to say that he had to be a world beater. Obviously, this was not a high-scoring game. This was one that they did have a shot there because considering that once LSU took the lead there, what was it, about 12 minutes ago, somewhere around there, and then they had the ball and they marched down, but they couldn't convert on a fourth down there at the Clemson 33. And then even though they get the ball back, what happens? They turn it over on downs. So all you could say to that is, all right, way to go there, Cade Klubnik and the Clemson offense. So Dabo Swinney's going to have to go back to the drawing board to see what he could draw up for next week and beyond, because that was another putrid performance there by Clemson, especially when a lot of people are expecting them to do big things and get off to a good start. And LSU, I get it that they're top ranked as well, but that was just another eyesore for the Clemson Tigers there to get themselves off on a good foot, which they absolutely did not. And then they also had those costly fumbles there, including the one in the first half with the Clemson 12. Yeah, just terrible by the Tigers. So I don't know what they're going to do to try to get themselves back. I'm sure they're going to have a very easy opponent upcoming this week, but it's not going to mean much knowing that you had a chance there against LSU and you dropped the ball. And then you had last night with the Hurricanes and the Fighting Irish. Of course, that is a historical matchup when you think back to the 80s, as I talked about there on Thursday. And yesterday was one of those games where Miami had a lead and then they were trying to come back, Notre Dame, and you thought maybe just they were going to somehow, some way steal this game from the Hurricanes as they headed into the fourth quarter down 21-7. Now they scored right out of the gate. They got the touchdown there to draw closer 5 minutes into the fourth. But then Miami had kicked a field goal, and even though the Fighting Irish came back and they cut it there to 3 to make it 24-21, but they got that go-ahead field goal late. They didn't get the field goal right afterwards. That's my apologies there. Even when the Fighting Irish came back and Miami did kick the field goal with 1:04 left to go, and then although they had to go the length of the field to try to get themselves in field goal range, but what happened there? Back-to-back sacks there on the final possession by the Hurricanes, where Notre Dame was standing still and weren't able to advance and move the ball. So therefore, time expires, game over, and the Hurricanes win by 3 over the Fighting Irish. But you know that's not going to be a damning loss for the Notre Dame team. But if you're Marcus Freeman, and yeah, it just doesn't sit well with you. C.J. Carter, quarterback. I understand that this is now a team that is looking to try to get back to where they were last year, to a championship game, and we know the Fighting Irish for all their history, etc. And even with this rivalry, this game meant more for Miami than Notre Dame. And I think in the big picture, probably more so for the Hurricanes. But Miami, you can't feel good about that game because Miami, although a team that was competitive last year, they had the reigning Heisman Trophy Ward. No, I take that back. I'm thinking Cam Ward. He was the number 1 pick of the draft. We all know that the Heisman Trophy winner went to Travis Hunter. But with Cam Ward being the number 1 pick, and they had a guy there who led Miami to big things, although fell short of the postseason. But I would think if you're Marcus Freeman, yes, the croissant and the coffee are not going down smoothly, whether it would be yesterday or even this morning for that matter. So just a disappointing weekend for the teams that you thought were going to be able to prevail. That's not to knock Miami because, yeah, that was pretty much I'm not going to say a pick'em game, but that was a toss-up knowing that Notre Dame had to go to Miami. I'm sure the weather was hot, although the game was played at night. But for the Fighting Irish, for Clemson, Alabama, and Texas, just highly disappointing efforts, if you ask me, when we take a look at the college football landscape overall. And then tonight you have TCU and North Carolina, the debut of Bill Belichick, which I believe that game is on ESPN. So let's see how he does and how his first game's going to go. And knowing that Clemson lost, I'm sure that's got to feel good for him because they could get off to a good start here knowing that Clemson already has an L in their ledger. And college football, as far as the schedule goes, we'll look at it more on Thursday's podcast. But yeah, that is it for your week 1 as we get set for college football and the next 12 weeks to see where this is going to go. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fascinating. A lot of excitement. And I'm glad it's back. And this weekend, although the games were competitive for the most part, but certainly with those teams, the aforementioned, you thought that they were going to play a lot better or do a lot better, but certainly did not do well. And maybe in Alabama's case, the game wasn't really close, but still, they are Alabama, and you expected a lot more. All right, now keep the helmet and shoulder pads on as I go through the NFL. And yes, I know we're already 4 days removed from this, but the take that I have with this, Micah Parsons getting dealt from Dallas to Green Bay, I'm going to start with the Cowboy angle before I get to the Green Bay angle. Jerry Jones strikes again, and I said this weeks ago how you need to take the microphones away, how there needs to be an intervention. I understand he's the owner of the team. He can do whatever he wants. I get it. He's 82 years of age. I'm sure he wants to win another Super Bowl before his time is up here. Not to say that as a, I hate to say it this way, as a death knell. But let's call it as we see it. The three-ring circus and carnival that are the Dallas Cowboys continues. And we know the whole story about Micah Parsons, the contract from training camp, and the back and forth. Micah says, I played my last game in Dallas. Yeah, I'll be a hold-in. I'll show up, but I'm not dressing up for practice or any of the games, etc. Jerry's saying that, do you expect him to be in uniform? Come opening night, he said no. And even then, I said, then trade him. If he's not going to be here, trade him. And listen, I don't get a lot of things right when it comes to predicting sports and things of this nature, but this one I got right. So he ended up trading him to the Green Bay Packers. What did he get in return? All right, he got Kenny Clark, veteran defensive lineman, Pro Bowl player. I'm sure he's going to fill a need there on the defensive line. Fantastic. Is he anything close to Micah Parsons? Absolutely not, but they play different positions, so fine. They get 2 number 1 picks in the process. The 2026 pick for the Packers, 2027. If you're Jerry Jones, or if you are a competent football person, I would have fleeced the Green Bay Packers. This is a guy that's 25 years old, before the prime of his career, and you mean to tell me all you got were 2 number 1s and another body to fill your defensive line? I would have said, all right, we're going to start with 2 number 1s. I want this year's number 3 and 2026 is number 3 and 2027's number 2 pick. Now, was that negotiated during this transaction? That I don't know, and who knows if we'll ever know. But I would have tried for more than what they got, because to trade away a guy like this who's still young, it's not as if he's 30 years old. You should have gotten a hell of a lot more. And this is comparable as far as the package that they got back. And actually, it's a little bit better when you think about it, but it's comparable to the Luka trade. And for those who came out and said, oh, well, this is the Luka trade 2.0, and oh, the Dallas fan, they're going to be upset again. No, it's not. Luka was the Mavericks. Micah Parsons is not. And although he's was a big part of the Cowboy team, but you cannot say that he is that much more meaningful to the Cowboys as Luka was to the Dallas Mavericks. People were outraged over that deal. Were people outraged over this? I'm sure they were very unhappy Cowboy fans, but the closest one that I know and is the biggest Cowboy fan that I've ever met is my cousin, who we're the same age, so we go back 50 years, so we follow sports. And he even said that, you know what? Can I say I'm surprised? Would I have liked to get more back? Yes, but he wasn't throwing a chair. He didn't throw his phone across the room and think that, oh, geez, we trade away Micah Parsons. That's it. I'm done with the Cowboys. He did not. So that just makes you think that, yeah, Jerry should have gotten more in that deal. So therefore, and we all know that those picks are going to be minimum in the low 20s to the mid 20s come next year and the following year. It's not as if that's going to be a top 10 pick. It's not as if it's going to be top 15 or even in the top 20. Packers, they're probably going to be anywhere between 10-7 and 12-5, which means they're going to be between 18 and 25 when it comes to the draft. All right, so maybe they're in the top 20. Maybe. So that's why this trade doesn't look good for the Cowboys unless they're going to package their pick and that pick to move up in the draft to get maybe a quarterback. Because Dak Prescott, I know he just signed that deal and he's going into year 2, but who knows? With the Cowboys, you never know. The 3-ring circus that I mentioned. So that's the Cowboy side of things. Now the Packers, I got news for you. We knew that Micah Parsons was going to get paid. And yes, he was going to get paid close to what Myles Garrett got and paid to close to what TJ got in Pittsburgh. Obviously, he got more. He is going to make 4 years, $188 million. Just do the math, people. But upon signing, got $120 million guaranteed. And on top of all that, and think about this, he got $120 million guaranteed. upon signing. TJ Watt signed a 3-year extension for $123 million. So, and whatever he got guaranteed, which wasn't $123 million. But he could get up to $136 guaranteed when it's all said and done. And here's the problem that I have for not only the Cowboys not getting back more than what they should have received, but now here's the problem. They had to pay Micah, fine. Did they have to pay him 4 years at $188 million? Did they have to pay him that $120 million upon signing, and then $136 guaranteed? Now, you knew he probably could have gotten $120 guaranteed, which would have been astronomical. But, I mean, seriously? And here's a guy, and this is not just for me, and I've watched the games, not maybe every Cowboy game or every snap, but I've watched the big games when it really matters. And my cousin has echoed this, and pretty much what he says, I know because he watches every down. Parsons, we know he is a pass rusher extraordinaire. He's among the handful. TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson. You could argue any one of those 4 guys. And I know I may be missing 1 or 2 along the way. My apologies. But if you drafted any of those guys, you can't argue that they're tops at what they do. But in big games, he's invisible. And he's not great against the run. Not to say that he has to be stellar or excellent, but all the comparisons of Lawrence Taylor, so on and so forth, well, he better act like Lawrence Taylor starting now, because what he's going to get paid and what that production is going to be, and yes, he could get 15, 18 sacks this year, but they better not come at the expense of the dregs of the league. So that means he's going to go up against the Giants, and I don't know their schedule at the top of my head, but let's just say those sacks better not come against the Giants. It better not come against the Carolina Panthers. It better not come against the Atlanta Falcons. It better not come against the Seattle Seahawks or the Arizona Cardinals or teams like that. Now, he may get the 4 sacks against the Cowboys because obviously he's going to have 20 chips on his shoulder when he comes to AT&T Stadium in 3 weeks from this coming Sunday because they play week 4. But to own up to that type of money, the biggest contract to a non-QB, he better put up, not monster numbers, he's going to have to put up Hall of Fame, iconic, and immortal numbers. And he's going to have to do it when the money's on the line. So if that means in December, now I know they play Detroit week 1, and that's going to be interesting against that offensive line. And I understand the excuse, well, he didn't really practice, he didn't do this, he wasn't in uniform. I don't want to hear it. He better be amped up, ready to go, because that bank account is fat right now. So guess what? He's going to have to put up fat numbers on that field against Jared Goff and company in order to justify not only the trade, but the amount of money that he's receiving in his contract. I don't know if anybody else has said that. And even though it's been 4 days, and I'm sure people don't care right now, they just want to get to the games, but I got news for you. I don't think this trade worked out for both teams. Now, I understand it could work out in Green Bay's favor, but again, he's got to own up to that contract. He can't take any plays off. So he could fatten up on all the bad teams when it comes to sacking the quarterback. But let me see, as I like to say in the opening of the podcast, I can see these good numbers in September, October, November, December, but I want to see when it really counts in January or even late December for that matter. But I want to see when it really counts, because if this man has 1 tackle, no sacks, no pressures in a playoff game or in late December when they're trying to get into the playoffs, then that contract right now might as well just go up in smoke. Not in Parsons' eyes, but in the fans' eyes. Just keep that in mind. And speaking of the Cowboys, they signed DaRon Bland, which my cousin said, I hope they don't extend Bland. I understand he had an all-pro year, etc., because he wants to tear it down and start over, which you know Dallas is never going to do, but they gave him 4 years, $92 million. I understand he had a huge year last year, but whatever money that wasn't going to Micah certainly went to DaRon Bland, so kudos to him. And then you had Jabril Peppers. I don't know where he's going to be. I know he got released out of New England. I'm not making a big deal out of Jabril Peppers, but there's a guy that could be or help out in the secondary. And then you had Leroy Jordan, speaking of Alabama in the previous segment, not only played under Bear Bryant, Dallas Cowboy, won a national championship and a Super Bowl, I believe Super Bowl 6 that was, with the Cowboys when they beat the Miami Dolphins, passed away at the age of 84. Now, he was before my time. I didn't really see him play, but obviously was a mainstay there in both of those places, Alabama, of course, and Dallas, as I mentioned. No cause of death, but he transitions. Thoughts, prayers, condolences go out to the NFL, the Cowboy family, Alabama, etc. upon his passing. All right, now let me get to what's happening as I break out the tennis racket and talk a little U.S. Open, because we have an interesting match that's taking place today, and not a lot has really transpired over the last few days as far as major upsets or anything like that. The men's side is pretty much chalk, as we thought, and I'll get to them in a minute. But the big thing that I want to discuss here, well, it's twofold. One is you're going to have a very interesting match today, and I don't believe it may have started. Who knows? Let me refresh this, because no, it's actually starting in a half hour as I'm recording this. Naomi Osaka against Coco Gauff. And Gauff, who had to fight off tears and was really emotional after having a performance which was not good, although she won and advanced in her second round match. This happened, I believe, that Thursday. And then she won a third round match Saturday, and now she's playing in the fourth round against Osaka, where, if you remember, in 2019, when Coco Gauff, I believe, was 15, or maybe 16 at the time, and I remember that was another, I believe it was a fourth round match where Osaka won, and I believe she won. Did she win that year? I should know that. But I'll never forget, after the match, they were at the net. Of course, they hugged and they spoke at length afterwards. I'm sure a lot of encouragement by Osaka. Gauff, who obviously was a spring chicken coming into the U.S. Open, and as we know, she won there a couple of years ago. And for them to match up today, and we know about Osaka's role and her road back to this point, as she took time off with mental health, also had a baby, and now here she is in the second week of the U.S. Open, which is a big story. And I understand, who knows if she's going to get past today. Gauff, who obviously had some turbulence there last week, as I mentioned, had, I believe, 8 double faults in that match where she barely won. And now here she is into week 2, going up against, I'm sure, a player and a person that she looks up to. So that is one I'm going to keep an eye on. Maybe later on, depending on how that match goes, it'll be a scenario where you'll see it on my YouTube channel as a short. I know I hadn't really talked much on my YouTube channel over the weekend, with it being Labor Day and kind of laying low. And I know with all the college football and everything that's happening, now I'll be back at it here with the new month, and obviously with everything that's going to be percolating here, not only just this week, but beyond. So definitely take a look at the YouTube channel. Again, as I mentioned at the top, subscribe if you haven't done so. But to me, that's going to be a fascinating matchup. And to stick on the women's side, you still have Aryna Sabalenka there. You still have Iga Świątek. In fact, Sabalenka is going to play Vondrasova. Marketa Vondrasova. I'm going to get her first name in there too. And they're going to match up then tomorrow. And then Jessica Pegula. A lot of vowels there, people, so bear with me. Pegula, who won her match against Ann Lee, and she's going to go up against Barbara Krejcikova, and Krejcikova, who beat Taylor Townsend. And we know about the controversy last week where Townsend and Jelena Ostapenko, and Ostapenko was flat out wrong for her coming out saying that she had no class and no education. I mean, if anybody showed no class and education, it was her by saying that. And yes, I can go into the weeds on that. She did apologize, although through social media, it would have been much better if she would have reached out to her camp. Maybe she did. That hasn't been reported. I don't know. But she should have reached out to Townsend herself to say, listen, terrible job on my part. I should have known better. I didn't mean to fly off the handle, blah, 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 whatever it was. Now, would Townsend accept? Or maybe she'll look at that as like, all right, fine, it was over, done with. And Townsend, she handled it with class. And she actually beat Mira Andreeva in her next match in the third round. And that was the big upset, really, over the last few days. Andreeva, who's the 5th-ranked women's player in the world, when she beat her, you probably thought that, wait a minute, maybe this could be a scenario where Townsend could get on that little magic carpet ride and ride into the next week and maybe get to a quarterfinal, semifinal, and beyond. But as it was, she lost to Krejcikova, and she's going to go up against Pegula here tomorrow. And then you also have Karen Makova, who will go up against the winner of Osaka and Gauff. Makova is ranked 11th in the world. And then you have Amanda Anisimova, who you remember from Wimbledon. And then, of course, you have Świątek. And that could be interesting there because if you recall, Anisimova beat the top-ranked player there in Sabalenka in Wimbledon, and then she got blown out by Świątek in the final. As a matter of fact, it was 6-love, 6-love. So she may actually get an opportunity to go up against Swiatek here in a quarterfinal tomorrow. So we'll keep that in mind, see if she can get any revenge on what happened there at Wimbledon. So that's what you have there on the women's side. And on the men's side, it's pretty much chalk. It's the same scenario that we thought going in prior to the start of the tournament, where if it went chalk, especially for Novak Djokovic, who won yesterday and now is in his 64th quarterfinal in the Grand Slam. I mean, the guy, let's face it, I understand you could talk Roger Federer. I understand you could talk Rafa Nadal. We know that Djokovic has the most all-time Grand Slam wins for a man, blows away the Pete Sampras of the world and everybody before that. But he is the GOAT. He is the guy that obviously is at the very top, despite the fact that he's 38 years of age and he's, I'm not going to say on his last legs, but when you have Carlos Alcaraz and you have Jannik Sinner, the top two players on the tour that are going to be ahead of him, and let's face it, he's going to have to face Taylor Fritz first, the last American player that's standing. Ben Shelton had to retire because of a shoulder injury. Francis Tiafoe, long gone. Tommy Paul, nowhere to be found. So Fritz is the last guy, and he's going to go up against Djokovic tomorrow, and the winner of that match is going to get the winner of the Alcaraz and Lehecka match. And Alcaraz, we would think, with the buzz cut and the purple colors and all that, is looking at a date to face Sinner for a third time in 3 consecutive Grand Slam finals. So we'll certainly see what's going to happen there, because you have right now, you have Alex de Minaur in the third set. As a matter of fact, he won, as he's going to advance to the quarterfinal against the winner of Andrei Rublev and FAA. That's Auger Aliassime, as currently FAA's up. Let me see if I'm reading that correctly. He won the first set 7-5. It's up 2-1 here against Rublev. And then you'll have Sinner going up against Bublik, and then Lorenzo Mazzetti against Munar, who I've never seen. And Mazzetti's ranked 10th in the world. Mazzetti, as we've seen, he's faced Alcaraz in the past, I believe in the French, in a, if not a quarter, in a semifinal. So Sinner, Alcaraz, that clash could still be made, and you could still have an outside shot of Djokovic and Alcaraz, which I'm sure everybody wants to see. I don't know if they want to see Taylor Fritz, who actually played in the semifinal against Alcaraz at Wimbledon and lost in 4 sets. It was game, but Alcaraz was too strong. And Alcaraz, who had a bit of a knee issue, I believe in the third round, or maybe it was the second round, but nothing alarming as he's continued to move along here in this second week, and we'll see where it's all going to unfold. By Thursday, we'll have a little bit of a clearer understanding as to what we're going to see heading into the weekend, both on the men's and women's side. But again, no major upsets. I know you had Madison Keys last week and Daniil Medvedev, and talked a little bit about watching Andreeva lose to Townsend, but you haven't really had the kind of craziness that you saw more so on the women's side throughout Wimbledon here than in the U.S. Open. And the weather's been fantastic here in New York. You're going to have another great week. I know you may have rain come Friday and Saturday, but as you get deep in the tournament, they're going to probably play indoors. You're not going to have to worry about the elements and the players playing outside. So that's a good thing. But the weather's been perfect here in New York. It's been mid to upper 70s, even dating back to last week. It's been seasonably perfect. Although, for me, and how much I love summer, I think the days of 90-degree weather could be gone. I'm sure you're going to get 80s, but right now it is looking as if it's going to be a very quiet September. Not only in Major League Baseball, but maybe the weather. Hopefully we have another streak of mid to upper 80s. I'm not asking for 90s. If we have a 90-degree day or two, I would love it. But if that's not going to be the case, listen, you got to accept it. You got to deal with it. Just like I said at the very top, summer is not over, people. It is not. So just as a reminder, it ends 3 weeks from today. And people can say, well, JAYREELZ, let it go. It's Labor Day weekend. It's pretty much the end. You live in the Northeast. Beaches and pools are closed. Forget about it. Not this guy. I'm still going to wear T-shirts, shorts, etc. And yes, until it's official. And you know you're going to get days in October where you're going to be able to go out in a T-shirt and shorts. I remember last year, after breaking my foot, going to the doctor for the first time in exactly 3 months after I broke my foot, I went for a run on a Sunday, October 19th. What was the temperature? It was 72 degrees. So it is not over, people. I know I sound like an old man. Get off my lawn. Summer's not over. Blah, blah, blah. Well, you never know what you're going to get with this podcast. So that's what I got there with the tennis. And yeah, that Gauff match I should have known was Donna Vikic at the third round, and she was tearful, and obviously the 8 double faults. So that was then, and this is now, and that match is going to start, like I said, in less than a half hour. And besides that, people, that's what I got. I mean, do I touch on the WNBA that the Lynx clinched the home court throughout the playoffs with the best record? No shock there. And with the Liberty, we'll wait and see what's going to happen with the Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, who's having issues with, I believe, an ankle. And then you have a scenario where you want to get them on the court altogether, including Jonquel Jones, because I saw a stat where when all 3 finish games, they're 10-0, and when they don't, they're 13-15. So if both Ionescu and Stewart, now I don't know how healthy they're going to be. I'm sure they're going to be nicked up, not 100% or anything close to it, but you know they're going to gut it out to try to defend their championship as the playoffs start in a couple of weeks. Just to keep that in mind as we move it along. I know Atlanta and the Las Vegas Aces have played well, and I believe they're ahead of them in the standings. But as we get closer, we'll unpack it. Maybe I'll do a little WNBA preview as we get that much more closer to the playoffs. But NBA, very quiet. NHL, I know camps will open up in about a couple of weeks. I believe maybe around the 12th, 13th. Maybe next Monday I'll get a better idea, understanding. We'll look at what lies ahead as we get to training camps. And then, of course, the NBA training camp is at the end of the month. And here we are, people. Sports Dead Zone, as I mentioned at the top, closed. Sports is going to be on and popping pretty much now until you get to Super Bowl 60, which will be February. I don't know the date off the top of my head. I'm not thinking Super Bowl right now. I'm barely even thinking NFL. So you know that it is going to be a lot coming down the pike here, not only for the podcast, but also for the channel, YouTube. A lot of live streams, a lot of content coming at you. Please subscribe again. I can't stress it enough as we go through the sports universe together throughout the course of these next few months. As you know, it is going to be on and popping. That'll do it, my good people. Another episode just about in the books. As always, thank you so much for stopping by here on this Labor Day or whenever you're going to listen to this. Maybe on your commute to work Tuesday, or food shopping or cleaning, whatever it is that you're doing, cutting the grass, getting ready for fall, who knows. But thanks again for stopping by, carving out precious time out of your day to listen to what it is I have to say about what goes on in the toy department of life called sports. And if you haven't done so, do I need to say it again? I've only said it about 50 times throughout the course of this podcast. But if you haven't, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, which there is video on Spotify. The website is JAYREELZ.com. And obviously, you know where to subscribe on YouTube. So please do so. Dial in, tap in. I got a lot of content coming down the pike. I promise you, a lot. Including, one more time, live stream Wednesday, high noon Eastern time, the NFL preview, which you can get at me. Ask all the questions. You can disagree with what it is that I'm saying. I'm all yours for that hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. So tune in, tap in, dial in. I trust you. You will not be disappointed. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, you can do so at the following: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the JAYREELZ Podcast, or JAYREELZ on Instagram. Twitter, JAYREELZ1, just a number. The old-fashioned way to JAYREELZpodcast@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, as you know, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do. If you couldn't tell throughout the course of this, 55, 56 minutes, then you got to come back on Thursday. Or better yet, come back Wednesday on the live stream, because then you can hear all of my thoughts, opinions, etc., analysis, live and in living color. And as it is, this was unedited, straight through, no breaks, no pauses, no nothing. So I don't know where else you're going to get all this content in one podcast. I don't know where you're going to get all these different angles, analysis, etc. under 1 hour in this particular case. So you're going to have to come on back, because as long as I'm sitting in front of this camera and microphone, I promise you, I will deliver nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the JAYREELZ Podcast always comes correct, direct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond, peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next time on the JAYREELZ Podcast, on the flip, baby.